Marion Crane stared at the money. Stacks of it, enough to solve her problems. Her life had become a cage, her relationship a dead end. She dared to dream of a fresh start, of freedom with her lover Sam. But the money was a wall between them, her fiancé unable to afford the life she craved. She saw an opportunity, a chance to make it all right. Desperate times, she told herself, taking the money, slipping away from her life. The open road stretched before her, a symbol of her newfound freedom. But with each mile fear gnawed at her. The weight of her theft pressed down, a suffocating blanket of guilt and terror. Every car that passed seemed to hold an accusing stare. She saw police cars and ordinary sedans, their sirens wailing in her imagination. Sleep evaded her, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and paranoia. Should she turn back, confess? But the thought of Sam, his disappointment, kept her going. Nightfall brought a sense of urgency. She needed shelter, a respite from the road and her gnawing fear. The neon sign flickering through the rain promised sanctuary. Bates Motel, it read, a simple name for a seemingly innocuous establishment. Little did she know, she was driving into a nightmare. She pulled into the desolate courtyard, the only car in the lot. A bell jangled as she entered the motel office, announcing her arrival to the shadows within. Norman Bates was a peculiar man, his eyes holding a mixture of shyness and something else, something unsettling. He was eager to please, his awkward demeanor almost charming. He showed her to her room, number 1, a small tidy space with a claustrophobic feel. She ate dinner with Norman, a strange, stilted affair in his dimly lit parlor. He spoke of his mother, his voice tight, his eyes distant. Marion felt a shiver run down her spine, a sense of unease settling in the pit of her stomach. Back in her room, Marion decided to turn in early. The day had been long and exhausting, filled with the stress of travel and the weight of her thoughts. She hoped that a good night's sleep would help clear her mind and rejuvenate her spirit. The motel room, though modest, offered a temporary refuge from the world outside. She glanced around the dimly lit space, her eyes lingering on the shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. The eerie silence of the room was both comforting and unsettling, a stark contrast to the noise and chaos she had left behind. The hot water of the shower washed away the grime of the road, a temporary balm on her frayed nerves. As the steam began to fill the small bathroom, she felt a sense of relief. The warmth of the water was soothing, and for a moment she allowed herself to relax. The rhythmic sound of the water hitting the tiles was almost hypnotic, lulling her into a state of calm. She could feel the tension in her muscles slowly melting away, replaced by a sense of tranquility. She closed her eyes, letting the steam envelop her. The sensation was almost like being in a warm, protective cocoon, shielding her from the worries and fears that had plagued her throughout the day. In that moment, she felt safe, as if nothing could harm her. The steam swirled around her, creating an ethereal atmosphere that seemed to blur the lines between reality and fantasy. Then, through the shower curtain, a figure appeared. At first, it was just a faint outline, barely visible through the thick steam. But as the seconds ticked by, the figure became more defined, more real. Her heart began to race, a sense of dread creeping into her mind. She tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination, a trick of the light and steam. But deep down she knew that something was terribly wrong. A silhouette, dark and menacing, it stood there, motionless, watching her. The air in the bathroom seemed to grow colder, the warmth of the shower no longer providing any comfort. She could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand up, her instinct screaming at her to run, to get out of there. But she was frozen, paralyzed by fear, unable to move or even scream. Before she could scream, the curtain was ripped back. The sudden movement was violent, aggressive, shattering the fragile sense of security she had felt just moments before. Her eyes widened in terror as she saw the figure standing before her, its presence overwhelming and suffocating. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out, her voice caught in her throat. The glint of a knife flashed in the dim light. The blade was sharp, deadly, and it caught the light in a way that made it seem almost alive. Her mind raced, trying to process what was happening, but it was all too much, too fast. The figure moved with a terrifying swiftness, the knife poised to strike. Terror, raw and primal, gripped her as the blade plunged down. The pain was immediate and excruciating, a searing agony that tore through her body. She tried to fight back, to defend herself, but it was no use. The figure was relentless, its attacks brutal and unyielding. Her screams filled the small bathroom, a desperate plea for help that went unanswered. Again and again it struck, turning the pristine white tiles crimson. The blood splattered everywhere, a stark contrast to the clean white surfaces. Each strike was a reminder of her helplessness, her inability to escape the nightmare that had become her reality. The sound of the knife hitting her flesh was sickening, a gruesome symphony that echoed in her ears. Her screams were cut short, drowned out by the sound of the shower and the heavy thud of her body hitting the cold, hard floor. The water continued to run, oblivious to the horror that had just unfolded. Her lifeless body lay there, a tragic end to a night that had begun with a simple desire for rest and peace. The steam still filled the room, but now it seemed to carry with it the echoes of her final, desperate moments. Section 6. Silence and Shadows. The motel stood silent, the only sound the steady drumming of the rain. Each drop seemed to echo the secrets hidden within its walls, secrets that had been buried deep but never forgotten. The room, once filled with Marion's fear and hope, was now a tomb, its silence more chilling than any scream. The air was thick with the weight of unspoken horrors, and the shadows seemed to whisper of the past. Norman, his face pale and streaked with water, stared at the carnage he had created. His eyes, wide with a mix of terror and resignation, reflected the storm raging both outside and within him. His mother's voice, a harsh whisper in his ear, urged him to clean up the mess, to hide the evidence of their terrible secret. It was a voice that had guided him, controlled him, and now, it demanded obedience once more. He moved like a man possessed, scrubbing, wiping, erasing any trace of Marion Crane's existence. Each stroke of the cloth was a desperate attempt to cleanse his soul, to rid himself of the guilt that clung to him like a second skin. Her car, sunk in the swamp behind the motel, would be her final resting place. The murky water swallowed it whole just as the motel had swallowed her life. The swamp, a silent witness to the crime, would keep its secrets well. Norman's eyes, haunted and hollow, stared out into the rain. He wondered if he would ever escape the shadows that clung to him, the silence that screamed louder than any voice. The rain continued to fall, a relentless reminder of the night's events. An old photograph of his mother sat on the dresser, her eyes seeming to follow him, judging him. It was as if she were still there, her presence as oppressive as the storm outside. Alone in the dark, Norman held his head in his hands, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. The silence was deafening, the shadows closing in, and he knew that he could never escape the darkness that had become his life. Section 7. Unveiling the Secrets. Days turned into a week, the disappearance of Marion Crane weighing heavily on the minds of those who knew her. Sam, frantic with worry, arrived in town, his search leading him to the Bates Motel. Lila, Marion's sister, driven by a desperate hope, joined him. Together with Arbogast, a private detective hired to find Marion, they began to piece together the fragments of her last known whereabouts. The motel, with its eerie stillness and Norman's evasive answers, became the focal point of their investigation. Section 8. The Mother of All Twists. The truth, when it finally unraveled, was more horrifying than anything they could have imagined. The discovery of a woman's body in the fruit cellar, the chilling realization that Norman's mother had been dead for years, pointed to a reality far more sinister. Norman, consumed by his twisted love for his mother, had developed a second personality, one that took on her persona, her voice, her murderous rage. The shy, awkward motel owner was also the cold-blooded killer, his mind a labyrinth of madness and delusion. Section 9. Psycho's Enduring Legacy. The shower scene, with its jarring violence and unexpected brutality, became one of the most iconic moments in cinematic history, forever etching the name Psycho into the annals of horror. This scene, meticulously crafted by Alfred Hitchcock, not only shocked audiences but also showcased his unparalleled ability to manipulate tension and fear. The rapid cuts, the piercing music, and the sheer unexpectedness of the attack left viewers gasping, redefining what horror could achieve on screen. The film's exploration of mental illness, voyeurism, and the dark side of human nature shattered the conventions of the genre. Hitchcock delved deep into the human psyche, presenting characters that were complex and deeply flawed. Norman Bates, with his unsettling duality, became a symbol of hidden darkness lurking beneath a facade of normalcy. The film dared to address taboo subjects, pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable in mainstream cinema at the time. Psycho was a game-changer, paving the way for a new wave of horror films that dared to confront audiences with their deepest fears. It wasn't just a film, it was a cultural phenomenon. Audiences were drawn to theaters in droves, eager to experience the thrill and terror that Psycho promised. The film's success proved that horror could be both commercially viable and artistically significant, inspiring countless filmmakers to explore the darker aspects of storytelling. Its legacy continues to influence and inspire filmmakers to this day, a testament to its enduring power and the chilling brilliance of its creator, Alfred Hitchcock. Directors like Guillermo del Toro, David Fincher, and Jordan Peele have all cited Psycho as a major influence on their work. The film's innovative techniques, from its use of music to its groundbreaking narrative structure, continue to be studied and emulated. Psycho remains a cornerstone of horror cinema, a timeless masterpiece that continues to captivate and terrify new generations of viewers.